right, welcome back to another episode of the Karter Cast. I'm your host, Karter Baughan. With me, as always, Connor Sparrow. And with us again, our annual guest, our favorite guest, I'm willing to say that, reoccurring guest. We had to use the bat signal for this one, NBA Draft. We're doing post-NBA Draft this time. It's Adam Stanco. Adam, thank you again for always joining us.
Oh, I'm excited. I got to tell you, the last couple of years I've had to turn down some of these requests as the job has sort of gotten a little more demanding and what have you, and stuff's trailed off. And meanwhile, I saw the bat signal, and I said, I can't turn the guys down. I mean, Karter and Connor, I can't say no. You guys are like a bad habit that I just keep coming back to.
Just can't quit.
I can't quit the Karter Cast.
If you're watching on YouTube or Spotify right now, I'll make sure to put the bat signal graphic that we use to make the invite. I'll make sure
to summon the guru of the draft.
Who created that? Who created it?
Oh, don't worry,
Karter.
dude. I'm always here. I'm doing all the graphics here. I'm behind the whole operation.
I was randomly at work. One day, and Karter just sends me this graphic and said, "It's time." I was like, "Oh, all right, there we go."
What I really love about Karter, my favorite attribute about you is your humility too, Karter. And I gotta say, that's what's really stood out to me.
I agree.
We can keep this going. Let's do an hour-long episode just talking about how awesome I am. This is great.
So this is how to host a podcast 101 with Karter Baughan.
This is how you get roasted on TikTok every single week during the NFL season. No, let's do NBA Draft. It's been a year. I saw you in Nashville back in April. Thank you again for taking me out to dinner. It was awesome seeing the studios and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But it's time to do what you do best. It's an NBA Draft. Let's talk. Let's start with Wemby real quick, and then we'll roll into the other guys, kind of go 1 through 5 on down a little bit. Wemby, where should expectations lie? This guy, everyone's going to be running wild with this. I'm not going to say which media outlet, but certain media outlet will run wild with him. It's going to be ridiculous. The guy's going to have insane expectations. Where should people's expectations lie for him coming into his rookie season?
I mean, of course, we've never seen anything like him before. I think that's where you start and finish there. It's like this guy is the ultimate unicorn. I mean, it's brought up all the time. You just don't see anyone at that size with that skill set. It's like we were almost waiting on seeing a player of this ilk. The last few years, I mean, the last decade or so, you started to see it where probably Kevin Durant was, I think, forefather of a lot of this. Like, I mean, you go back 95 and KG comes, coming into the league, and we saw, okay, I get it, that like a guy at that size can be that athletic, move that well with a skill set. But it wasn't necessarily, the league wasn't favoring that and really putting guys in positions to succeed. And then Durant, I think, has set the table for all these other dudes at like a ridiculous height. And Durant, but there's always been this thing of like, you don't want to be 7 feet, right? Like Durant's talked about that. Like you measure him, he doesn't no, he's not, 7-footer. And now with Giannis, it's like, and guys just keep getting taller. So you all of a sudden have a guy that's a legit 7'3", who shoots the way that he does. You guys have talked about it a ton. I've heard you guys discuss it. His ability to get his shot off, his handle. I mean, the one clip alone of him missing a 3 and following it up with a dunk, like, again, that stuff just doesn't exist. I think the hard part, all that being said about his skill set and all, and the footwork that we saw in the draft, and say what you will about the demonstration, but all that we saw there, like, I think everyone can talk about the skill set all day, but to me it's about like the pressures that are going to come along with him, and then of course the health for someone that size, because there are going to be guys that are going to want to take on the challenge. When Shawn Bradley came into the league at 7'6", like all guys wanted to do was dunk on him, and he sort of became, at the time, they didn't call it a meme then, but that was what he was. Everybody wanted to make a poster of him. And I think that's going to be the biggest challenge for Wemby now, is the idea that everyone's going to take him on as a challenge. They're going to push him. He is going to have issues physically on the block, but it's not like he's necessarily going to be asked to post up. I mean, we also see coaches get way more creative. I mean, is anyone a greater example of that than Joker? We see him catch the ball all the time in the high post, and you can't do anything with it.
Right.
Why wouldn't you do the same thing with Wemby? And I don't think there's a better situation in terms of an overall organization, head coach, a way that a group is going to manage him and the expectations better than Popovich, and better than the fact that, being in San Antonio, small market, will help. He's not going to have the distractions. Obviously seems like a really grounded kid. So I think he's set up for just a ton of success. And I go back, like, the only guy that I think is an apt comparison was Ralph Sampson. Came into the league, from Virginia with these crazy expectations, and we hadn't seen a guy that tall with the skill set. But the league wasn't set up to let a guy like that succeed with what his skills were going to be. And he had a solid career in the NBA. But now the league is sort of set up in every way, shape, or form. The problem is, like, what are realistic expectations? I would put it on you guys. Like, do we go back to LeBron and D Wade and Chris Bosh talking about, 6, 7, 8 championships? I mean, like, it's all measured in championships now too. And I look at, like, the Spurs roster and say, like, we'll see great improvement because he's going to upgrade that entire team. But I just worry about at what point do you need to start charging him with championships, and that's when the expectations get a little crazy to me.
Well, clearly the Spurs roster is not championship contention right now, and they're definitely a few years away. When I watch Wembanyama, I think in the league his offensive game is going to take a little bit. I really do. I think defensively he's going to be an instant impact, but offensively he's going to have to polish up his game a little bit, bulk up if he can. I'm curious, is he a surefire Rookie of the Year bet if he meets that 65-game threshold? Because we saw Scoot go to the Blazers with Lillard and Simons, kind of crowded backcourt. Is Wembanyama a surefire Rookie of the Year if he meets that 65-game threshold? Because I'm not entirely convinced.
I think he's in the best position to do it because I think the Spurs need him so much, and so you have a rare combination of, like, fit, expectation, but also they're going to try to win and and win now. And I think, like I said, I wouldn't typically say a rookie on the Spurs, but you go back historically too. Like, the other piece, like, you go back really far and say Pop has always found success with guys that you wouldn't, DeJuan Blair, Malik Rose. I'm just, like, he gets the most out of his players, and that's what I really expect from Pop. I mean, certainly Kawhi would fall under that camp too, and I think, as well as the obvious guys, going through, Manu, and then, of course, Duncan Robinson and guys like that. But I think that they're going to put him in such a position to succeed. He's going to be set up for success. He's going to be kept grounded. And he's going to grow also just as a human being, like, just being around those guys. I mean, Pop is huge. I spent time talking to, like, Sean Elliott when he was with the Spurs. Like, he would talk about how Pop wanted to take guys out to dinner and get to know you and introduce you to great Italian food and wines. I mean, PJ Carlissimo used to talk about that stuff all the time as well. Like, he turns you into a professional. Earl Watson, another guy I know, talked about the Spurs organization a bunch and would tell me about just how much thought they put into their planning for recruitment of free agents, and just how much care they had overall as an organization from the top down, R.C. Buford and everything. And so I just think, like, he's set up for all this stuff. Are other guys going to put up big numbers, and could Scoot Henderson have crazy success in year one, depending on the right situation? Or could we see Brandon Miller, catching a lot of lob passes and hitting a bunch of threes? I mean, yeah, all those things could happen. You could see guys challenged statistically, but I also think the hype machine is all favorable right now. This is the other thing I would say about him is, like, typically you see guys come in and there's this feeling of, like, angst, or even for number one picks. The other one that I think was really weird is, like, NBA draft, I'll call them pundits, but maybe let's say it's fans really for the most part. People don't like seeing a surefire number one. Even you go back as far back as LeBron in 2003, like, all of a sudden Carmelo goes and wins a national championship, and there started to be talk of, like, maybe Carmelo should be the number one pick in the draft. Like, no one likes the idea of just one guy standing alone, and for whatever reason, the media has been, like, obsessed with this guy. I think because he's different. I think because he's an interesting interview. For whatever reason, like, they're obsessed, and so no one has thrown out even this challenge of, like, other teams should go in a different direction, even if they think, like, Scoot is a generational talent too, which I love Scoot Henderson's game, but, like, I'm just saying in general terms, like, that's been the other part too. So it's also, you don't have this weird, like, media anger towards him or bias too, like, or against him, I should say.
The last thing I have on Wembanyama is, one, I really like his jump shot. That's the sneaky part of his game. It's not a herky-jerky jump shot kind of like Giannis's. It's really smooth. Like, I'm not going to say it's Kevin Durant-like, but it's a tier below Kevin Durant, I think, how smooth it is with his size and everything. But this is kind of a different question around Wembanyama and kind of a greater, grander scale of the NBA real quick. In the NFL, we see everybody tries to build around their rookie quarterback, and on their rookie quarterback contracts, let's build the team around them. Are we going to start seeing that in the NBA where your first year, the rookie year, you kind of feel out and see if this guy is legit, he's a franchise guy, and then while he's still on that rookie deal, you spend all your cap money, you trade your future assets to build a championship team around them. Do you think we see that with San Antonio and Wembanyama, or is it Popovich going to play the long game where it's, slowly develop first and second rounders? But I feel like we're going to see the first part because he's got limited time left in his coaching career.
That to me is such an interesting question because you're right. Like, it looked like Pop was on his way out, and there wasn't a reason to sort of stick around. Again, he loves player development. He loves having sort of this organizational control from the top down. I mean, he was the GM of the team and then fired Bob Hill and got on the bus and was like, guys, I'm your coach now. And that was it. And then he took over. Comes from a military background and believes in a level of hierarchy. But it's been, I mean, that was the whole issue why they lost Kawhi, was because Kawhi wanted to go get, medical reports from outside sources, second opinions, all that kind of stuff, and kept it in-house. So to your point, Karter, it's interesting. It's like, on one hand, I thought Pop was like on the way out, and then all of a sudden you have a guy that I can't think of a player that was being drafted in the last, let's say, 5 years, maybe longer than that, but just take in recent history. I mean, over the last 5 years, it's all been 19-year-olds taken with the top 2 picks, I think, for the last 8 years or something like that. I cannot think of a guy who came in that a team felt like, wow, he could be one of the top, let's say, 20 players in the NBA, and we can actually start to win now because we have him. And I think that challenge, without knowing any better, I would think Pop would want to take on that challenge of like, all right, now what can we legit build around this? And if it was anyone else, even if they thought he's going to be great in 3 or 4 years, which I know Pop. So I think to answer your question, I think it's going to be some combination of we can actually start to win now. And by the way, and like also develop this guy for 3 or 4 years from now. But in terms of like the roster, here's the other part. Is they've seen it. They had that happen with Tim Duncan. They saw an immediate turnaround. And so because all the front office people and coaching staff were there, they know that it's possible. And so I think that part, even though he's a young guy, I think that there's going to be a definite win now mentality. And you're right. Like the other part that's helpful is like, unlike superstars, when you trade for someone, and now new CBA, and you talk about how difficult it's going to be to get a third star in there, and keeping like 3 max guys is going to be almost impossible. Mm-hmm. So you can only do like having a guy in your rookie deal that's one of the top 20 players in the league, which I think everyone expects Wemby's going to be at that level. If that's the case, it opens up your flexibility tremendously as well. So I think they have a ton of options and sort of can accomplish both things you're saying. But if it was anyone else, I would say no, regardless of how good this guy is, it doesn't mean anything. Pop's gone in a couple of years. He's still going to do what he's done the last couple. But given the cap situation that they're in, and given the fact that he's on a rookie deal and the expectations are as high as they are, I think that they're going to turn it around to a win-now mentality.
Can I put on the conspiracy theory hat real quick?
Go for it.
Okay, so we know Popovich's famous line is he hates tanking. Forever, even when Duncan and those guys were on the end and left or whatever, he was still competing for that 8 seed every year. Why was he so content with tanking this year? Did the NBA let him know something that we didn't know already, that they were going to make sure a certain someone landed in San Antonio and not in, let's say, I don't know, Charlotte?
They did not want him in Charlotte. There's no culture building in Charlotte.
I hate NBA conspiracy theories. Like,
no, you don't, because they have legs.
Oh, I know. I'm people talking about when the Knicks drafted Patrick Ewing, and it was
Okay. But what about David Stern owning the New Orleans Hornets, giving himself Anthony Davis? Isn't that a little sketchy when the Charlotte Bobcats go 7-59? 7-59. How bad? Please, how bad? Do
No,
you
I
have to
love.
be?
You put it this way. I love the fun of NBA conspiracy theories. I think I hate the idea of if any of these came true. It's
It would
it's
hurt.
just
It
like,
would hurt.
well, it's like when you have a ref that comes out and talks about how
Ruined
games
Steve
were
Nash's
fixed.
legacy. Yes, he did.
I mean, it's that or
Eric Lewis.
Kings Lakers, and the way that the officiating when the officiating's really bad and you look and see who the referees were in a certain game. I hate that stuff because anything that taints the integrity of the game is a killer for me. I always find it funny too, like that Silver could set it up, so if he theoretically could set it up so anyone could end up with this kid, any lottery team, and then it ends up going to the Spurs, like a smaller market team. Like, it's just funny to me, the idea. Like, granted, it's the best situation for Wemby. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, like, in terms of actually, it's the same thing. Like, yeah, it's the league is fixed, and then it's Miami and Denver in the NBA Finals.
I can
Fair.
paint you another picture is where everyone said, "Oh, if Zion goes to the Knicks, it's rigged." But spin zone real quick. Who were the teams at the bottom of attendance in that NBA season? 32 and or whatever, 30 and 29 in attendance. The Pelicans and the Grizzlies. Who got 1 and 2? The Pelicans and the Grizzlies. Just putting it out there.
The tinfoil hat is out in full swing right now.
It is out in full swing.
I love it. I mean, I love the fact that you go, like I said, for entertainment purposes, I'm down. I'm just saying in terms of
I hope they're not true. I really hope they're not
as a
true.
fan, like it would just, I don't. And the thing is, like, here's probably why. And so, I love that you bring this stuff up because it is entertaining. I would say for me, probably the issue at heart is that in the NBA, it doesn't take much to swing, as we know. That's why conspiracy theories can exist, because it doesn't take much to transform the fortunes of a franchise. One guy totally changes who you are, especially because it's so hard to acquire superstars, and especially for small markets to do it. So maybe your Zion theory is right in some alternate universe. I don't know. Maybe
Some are
it
saying.
is. But
Some are saying.
but it's true. I mean, it's like officiating and acquiring star players, which is what everyone always wants to talk about conspiracy wise, are both things. And by the way, to your point, there's also a lot of money on the line, right? Like, it's important in terms of a series going 7 games for TV networks and stuff. We all hate to say it, but they're incentivized to. They make more money the longer a series goes. And if big market teams are in a finals, that also is financially incentivized. So I get why people believe that, and I also get that just doing that would change the outcome. I mean, think about it compared to the NFL. All of a sudden, it's like, oh, I want this one rookie quarterback to end up. Like, how much would it really change? Peyton Manning goes 1-15 or something as a rookie. Like, it's,
I don't know. That's
Ten,
the beauty of
now
it.
you ruined my whole day, Carter. Now I got to think about this stuff. So.
Tinfoil hat off for a second. So ever since the Hornets got stripped away from the number 1 pick back in the lottery, it's always been the draft starts at 2. Who are the Hornets taking it to? Miller, Scoot Henderson. Do you think the Hornets did the right thing? Who would you have taken? And are the Hornets good enough to draft on need like they did? Or should they have just taken the best available, which in my opinion was Scoot? What do you think?
So first, let me start with my philosophy with drafting, certainly in the lottery, but really I think overall, is that you always go with the best available player. I mean, how foolish would you look in any given draft? Do you want a guy that's going to be a superstar, or do you want a guy that's a tier 2 or tier 3 level player just because he seemed to fit the roster better?
Right.
The only time that I would have second thoughts about that, and it's more about your roster construction than it would be in terms of who you actually pick, is if, in my mind, you're looking at a superstar plus you have someone at that position already who's dominating the ball. And then you have to sort of think, do I move one of these guys because the development of one of them might be hindered by taking this? And that's the interesting piece with the Hornets, because the LaMelo thing is so fascinating to me. So let's pause this for a second. I want to ask you guys, because I'm more curious, as you guys discuss Hornets all the time, so it's so relevant to this discussion. Where do you think LaMelo is right now in his development, and who can he be? Like, what's his max? Do you think as a player? Not who do you compare him to? I'm saying, what do you think he can be as a player? So I'm curious to both of you guys.
I'll start with this. I don't think he's going to be a 25 per game points per game scorer. I think he's more of a distributor. He wants to share the ball. I think he can get to a consistent all-star level. I think he can have 6, 7 all-star appearances. I don't know if he's ever going to be in the MVP conversation, and I've accepted that. But he's a guy that can really lead a franchise in the right direction and set other guys up on the fast break. Like, he's so talented and willing to share the ball, and he's so young. He's still so young. And I'm just worried for the city of Charlotte. Like, they need to build around him and put more pieces around him before he takes that lucrative deal from LA or Miami or whoever, a big market team. As far as talent-wise, though, he's got all the talent in the world, and I think he can really lead a winning team. I think he's the right guy.
Yeah, I don't know. I think his potential is third-team All-NBA. I don't see him ever getting first and second team. I think true, unbelievable year, right pieces around him. He could maybe get to third-team All-NBA. I think you're right, Connor. Consistent All-Star is what the max potential is. Do I see him in the MVP conversation? No. I agree with Connor.
That's really interesting. So if you go based upon that, then you say he's not a transcendent star, right? That he's not at that, which is really interesting from guys that are fans of the Hornets.
Yes and no, because I think he makes everybody else on the court better. But does that always translate to all-star MVP kind of level? At Jokic's level, yes. But I don't think it necessarily it'll be that kind of level of Jokic-like. But I just think he can make everybody on the court better, which will contribute to winning basketball in Charlotte.
Well, to me, I think that was what I was going to say, is sort of like if his ability to make his teammates better translates into wins, and that's an interesting thing. If it's not just I'm throwing this pass because it's interesting, but rather me finding the open guy and maximizing my talent and the talents of others starts to get them to play with a selfless nature, then now things change. I mean, that's to me the biggest thing when you watch Jokers, that everyone else starts to play with this level of unselfishness. I mean, Jamal Murray, who we all know is a dominant scorer in the league and loves to shoot the ball and is so creative off the bounce, but seeing him racking up assists in the finals, I think, is attributable to that. Like Aaron Gordon taking on a complimentary role, what have you. Other guys looking to make the extra pass. And that's the thing. It's one thing to play with a guy who's really good at making flashy passes, but it's another if he's making sure everyone else is set up. So, and if that translates to wins, then I think what separates him from where people see Tyrese Halliburton all of a sudden getting MVP discussion. I don't know that there is, but I trust you guys if that's where you think that the max is. But let's just say, regardless, let's say where it is. I set that up to say then, for me, I'm curious about him and Scoot on the floor together. I think that's a really interesting combination. I think both guys need the ball in their hands. I know people talk about Scoot could play off ball, even though he's not this great shooter, but both guys, can play out the wing. We see that LaMelo can shoot it and from deep, and he likes to pass. I don't know. Scoot could guard point guards while playing the two. I mean, that was the original intention of the Cavs. They were trying to get DeJuan Wagner to play alongside LeBron, and DeJuan had health issues at the time, but he was always going to be LeBron was going to be the point guard on offense. Mm-hmm. And DeJuan was going to be the shooting guard, and then in reverse on defense. But I still would say that Scoot Henderson's a better talent than Brandon Miller just because of his pure drive. I think naturally talented, Brandon Miller has the size, the length, shooting ability, can handle it some. His handle needs to get a lot better, honestly, but I mean for his size. And seems like a great fit on this Hornets team. If you're going to build your prototype guy that you'd want to play alongside LaMelo and a guy you want to build along, sure. There's times I just worry about his ability to just take over games and stuff and have that alpha mentality, which I think you really need to be an absolute superstar, whereas I think Scoot has that. He is intensely driven, certainly has the physical attributes, not just the athleticism, but the long arms. His ability to defend, I think, will be excellent at the next level. He's already proven that he's strong, and he's willing to initiate contact, which I think is a big thing in the NBA. It takes guys years to get to. So I think Scoot is going to be an outstanding talent. So I personally would have looked to draft Scoot, but I also would have wanted to see how can that fit ultimately work, and does bringing Scoot in hurt the development of either one of them? That's the other piece to this. Yeah. But, I cannot imagine going with fit over the better prospect.
I'm just worried the Hornets going to look back in 3 years and be like, man, we really made a mistake. Like, look, Scoot's an all-star in his third year, and we're down in the dumps, and Miller's averaging 10 points a game. I don't know. I'm just worried they're going to look back. I think Scoot was the safer option just from a basketball player perspective. Like, I don't think there's a world in which his floor is lower than Brandon Miller's.
Yeah, and when you watch Scoot, one thing I hate about, like, when I look at NBA draft picks and I'll watch full game film, I'll watch all this stuff, if I don't realize you're on the court, that's a big problem for me. And Brandon Miller will disappear in games constantly, like you said, where he doesn't feel like he has that alpha mentality to really take over a game. But Scoot Henderson, every single time he is on the court, whether it's defensively, getting in the mix, whether it's on offense, drives, cutting, doing what he's got to do. That's why I was Scoot over Brandon Miller, really, because he's always involved in the game, and Brandon Miller likes to disappear. And the Hornets already have guys that like to disappear, like Gordon Hayward.
I'll go one further. I'll go, Karter, on that point too. You know what scares you? The thing that, and I like Brandon Miller as a prospect. Do not get me wrong. I like
he's
him
6'9", can shoot the ball. It's hard to not like him.
And I think if he puts the one thing that's always really difficult to project when you start to look at how you're seeing prospects, whether you see them. There's the game film. There's what they did in high school, which is where they're the most free. I've made that point for forever. Like, that's why high school evaluators often are better than what guys see in college, because you see what the real potential. Now, this is for superstars. Most guys aren't going to get the opportunity to just be in a situation in which they're ball dominant and they're the main guy and they can go. But when you see that, that's where you can see, all right, what his ceiling could potentially be if a team lets him go. So, again, this is only a rare group of people that are even going to get that opportunity, but what's their ultimate ceiling? And you see it on the high school level more than in college. They're oftentimes more controlled, right? And they're playing in certain systems. Calipari's famous for saying to his guys, hey, Devin Booker, you're a shooter. Hey, Karl Anthony Towns, you're a rim runner, whatever it is. So you all of a sudden don't see the skill set that these guys have. But anyway, I say that to say, I think Brandon Miller's a really good prospect. But what almost scares me about him is like, he presents like a false confidence in interviews. That scares me almost more than him disappearing, because I think
it's ridiculous.
He could put the work in, but when he starts talking about how great he is and this and that, it almost comes off as this bravado that he doesn't necessarily even believe in. And that worries me more than him disappearing in games, because a lot of that I get when you're 19, especially going through the year that he did and everything off the court and all that kind of stuff. I mean, there was so much attention on him. He's going to put the work in. If he does that and really works on his game, I think the confidence will come and he'll evolve. But it's almost like when guys present themselves as being something that they're not, that's what worries me even more. And maybe I'm reading into it, but the interview stuff scares me more than what I saw him disappearing.
What about another conspiracy theory time? We can keep going on this. What if he's laying the groundwork for eventually becoming Skip Bayless's co-host on Undisputed? There's an open spot, What if,
You mean Paul George is my goat as a topic bar wouldn't look good on TV? Come on, guys.
No. I'm kidding there. One thing you mentioned, though, that I found interesting, you talked about Karl Anthony Towns and Devin Booker in college, how those guys weren't able to show their full potential, whether it's the spacing in college, whether it's, there's so much talent on the team, there's limited minutes or whatever. But I think that kind of brings back to my point where I kind of like Derek Lively in this draft. Obviously, I'm a Duke guy. It's easy to say I like Lively, Duke, I like Duke, whatever. But in high school, he showed he could stretch the floor and shoot the ball. In college, he could rim protect. He was probably the best rim protector in college basketball this year, maybe besides Aziz Badego at Utah Valley. And also, the sneaky great part about his game is he can guard the ball handler, smaller guards. He can keep up with him, and that's huge in the NBA right now. And it kind of brings back to the overall question is, how do you balance what you saw in college versus high school? How do you balance that?
I'm gonna answer this I like Lively as a prospect too. I'm with you, and I think he's got some serious potential at the NBA level. But I think the answer to that is really tricky. I mean, it's individual. It's always going to depend on the individual prospect. But the way that I typically think to break these things down is you have to almost categorize whether a guy is what level of prospect they are. So if we're talking about like a tier 1 guy we think is going to be all-star level, franchise changer for you, potentially in the MVP conversation, but those guys are even more rare. You almost can't. But if they're going to be your guy, lead the team, all that kind of stuff, I need to see what is their peak. And oftentimes in college, you're not going to see what their peak is. I mean, at Duke, you're playing with other superstars. It's really difficult. You have to start looking. There's things that you can pick out that are both the physical attributes, and then there's mental toughness and all that kind of stuff. Do they want the ball in end-of-game situations? Those kinds of things. But, there's very subtle things. Like if a guy catches a ball on a wing, is he worried about his primary defender, or is he looking at where the help is coming from, and is that the decision he's making based upon whether he's going to attack the rim or not? All those kinds of stuff, how they handle pick and rolls, what's his decision making like on pick and roll stuff, all that kind of stuff. So, but a lot of it really comes down to guys in high school play when they're free, and like you look at a top 10 prospect coming out of high school. That is when they have the ability, they have the ultimate green light, and you can just see that they really open it up. And whereas, like I said, in college, there's going to be certain restrictions. So it's all little things for me that I'm looking at in terms of like positional size, all that kind of stuff. Can they dominate? If you get past, though, your guys that you're expecting to be superstars at the next level, then it becomes what we discuss as being a +1 skill. So do you have a reason? The league's become so specialized. Is your shooting ability just at an elite level? Could you be? Can you lead the second team as a ball handler and a guy that can distribute for the second team unit? Are you a rim protector? Are you a 3-and-D guy at the wing? Let's say. So it's finding some specific skill set that you can work on, because in those situations, you're going to be called oftentimes either on limited minutes or your back-end rotation guy, and it's really how are you finding other ways that you can contribute. Just guys that contribute as superstars are just so rare in the league. So you need to see, do they have superstar talent? No. Okay, so then if it's not, superstars have to do everything. So if it's not that, what's your individual skill that you're going to bring to the table that helps this?
I think that's fair. So we just talked about the conversation about high school having freedom, college maybe a little bit more restricted. I want to transition to a league that I think has the ultimate freedom when you have the ball in your hands, and that's the Overtime Elite League. Doesn't seem like there's too many sets running in that league. Anyways, we've kind of went down the list. We talked Wembenyama. We talked Scoot versus Miller. I want to get your opinion on the Thompson twins, and I want to more specifically talk about this Overtime Elite League. How do scouts gauge the talent level in this? Because you talked about high school, they're free. College scouts, those are, that's been around for a long time. How do you scout the Overtime Elite League when there's playing against guys that are 16, 17 in some scenarios, but they clearly have the skill set, they have the physical attributes, they're both top 5 picks? What's your opinion?
I mean, look, it's this. You start with the same sort of checklist, right? Whether this is written down or whether it's off the top of your head, like knowing this because you've been a long time scout. In terms of, again, you go back to positional size, you go back to things like your work ethic, what kind of teammate are you, all these things and then your apps, then your skill set, how well do you shoot the basketball, how tight is your handle, where's your frame going to be in a couple of years. You try to project out how much weight's a guy going to put on, like how physical can he get, what role will he play. People talk about positionless basketball, but there's still got to be a way that you see them fitting into the league. And I think more than positionless basketball, I think positions have changed, and what the definition for it has changed too. And I know you guys we've talked about in the past, and we can also talk about, like the college post players, for instance, and get into that discussion. But I think in terms of like the Overtime Elite one is really tricky, because as you bring up, it's like you're playing the other OT teams, plus you're playing, the prep schools.
There's a guy on the PA mic the whole game. I mean, lights are going off. It's almost like glorified AAU.
We should do a light show here on the podcast. Anytime
I think you guys should do a light
just
show.
Boom, 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 boom.
I can't wait till he edits this clip. So there's a light show.
And now coming in.
That's how we need to start doing intros to the podcast. All right, at guard 6'2". There we go, baby.
I'll tell you, it's really tricky, but I think at the same time, the one piece that I think is often misinterpreted for people trying to figure out that are on like the outside of the draft and watch some college games, they don't realize the role that what a player was in high school, right, plays in these evaluations. The NBA scouts aren't seeing guys for the first time when they're in college. They know about almost everybody. I mean, there's obviously exceptions to that. There's guys that are late bloomers, developers, grow a bit, what have you. But so they know about these kids from the high school level. And the other piece that I think people often misunderstand is because there's like this I don't know, this cliche about guys working out against chairs or in empty gyms and stuff. True workouts and true workout guys like put guys through game situations and working at game speed, and you get a real sense in workouts also in terms of competitiveness. The workouts I've been at, you get a sense of leadership when you see guys. There's nothing harder. I always bring up the example of Donovan Mitchell, watching him work out a few times in LA, and the thing that blew me away was like he was a leader amongst a group. It's like 7 or 8 guys, and they would do these drills like, all right, guys, you have to as soon as you guys make 5 threes, these step back threes or something, we move on, we take a break, then we move on to the next drill. And he's rooting his teammates on. Most guys you would see do that would look so foolish.
Yeah.
And it's like embarrassing, like trying to cheer on a guy. But he did it in a way that didn't come off as like corny in any way or cheesy. It was just that he has this natural leadership ability, so likable and charismatic, and that stuff sticks out. So even in a workout, like the real scouts can pick that kind of stuff up. And plus they pick each other's brains. Like they know how much a kid wants to be in the gym, how much they want to get better. And I do think overtime elite, like I think the concept, like anytime you're a disruptor, and especially with what the NCAA has been like, I grew up loving college basketball, but there's parts about it that have fallen apart. And this year's draft, I think, was a great example of like, man, it's tricky to find guys at the college level like making an impact in the draft. But I say all that stuff to say, there's a lot of good stuff that you see in terms of competitiveness, crowds, tough environments, going on the road, that I just don't think Overtime Elite provides for. It doesn't mean that guys can't be great players out of there. It just means it's much harder to answer your question when it comes to scouting them, because there's certain things where you can see guys fall apart in those situations or rise to the occasion. I mean, I think about like Anthony Edwards, that for all the knocks you could say, for all different reasons, people talk about if he didn't love basketball, all this. But when you saw Anthony Edwards at like Maui Invitational, when it's crazy crowds and the intensity and stuff, and his game just went to another level, like that's when guys went, I don't care about the other stuff. He can say he doesn't love ball, or he can make these jokes and interviews and all this. Like this guy has it. And I think that's the thing that's really hard to find when you're viewing guys at the Overtime Elite competition.
You mentioned the decline in college basketball. Let's transition kind of the big man of college basketball. What do you think of the decline of the big man? We see the Schweeblays, I can't say his name to save my life, Drew Timme, Baycott, Edey next year in next year's draft. Will those guys ever become relevant again?
I think it's cyclical. I think they will. I think if anything showed you that I don't know if, I mean, those guys specifically, are a little bit different, but I think, you can go back to Luka Garza, a couple of years ago, like
Okafor even?
Guys, what's that?
Jahlil Okafor even a few years ago?
Yeah, I think Jahlil Okafor, and he's since had to work on the problem is now that like everyone wants fives now that can switch, right? You want guys that are able, you talk about positionless basketball, more than anything, it's on the defensive end. You want to make sure guys that can switch and guard different positions. So if you can't move your feet, that's a problem in today's NBA when guys just go pick and roll and they go hunting for defenders. So that's hard to do. The other thing that people don't understand about, and why I think a lot of like casual college fans run into an issue worried about, is that like Drew Timme has excellent footwork and all that, but like no one's running plays for him at the NBA level. I mean, Luka Garza was sort of the same way. So what else are you bringing to a team? So now all of a sudden, if you struggle defensively, if you're not a great passer, yes, you could probably beat your man one-on-one if they set you up and put you on the block. But how often are you getting in the game, and how many opportunities are you going to get to do that? The reason why I still have hope for the future of big men, though, especially as post players, I will say this, for dominant bigs, which we used to have, we aren't that far removed. I mean, it's not that many years with like Shaq, David Robinson, Patrick Ewing, Hakeem. I think the thing is that like I look at Joker and I'm like, guys had an issue with him down in the paint. He gets where he wants to go. And yes, he loves to catch in the high post and pass over people and all. His passing is elite. So it's really tricky when you send double teams. But I think other people are going to pick that up. They're going to want to be passers as big man. I think that's something. And so I think as a big man, you need to learn how to pass. And I think post play will make a difference because now, since there's so many smaller lineups, in order to combat that, you throw a big man out there, they can cause some serious damage. And I think the big men who did have success, whether it was, to your point, Edie, Timmy, Luka Garza, I don't know if I would put Shibwe in terms of an offensive threat in that category, but I would say if you think about all those guys, when teams were running plays for them, even guys at the high school level don't know how to stop bigs that understand how to post up. So for that reason, I do think that we may see a future with that, and I think Joker's the one that's going to pave the way because teams are going to go, man, we keep going small. All of a sudden they throw a big at us, and there's nothing we can do. And then I look at and the counter, the opposite of that is I look at Bam, and Bam is pretty incredible talent defensively, he can switch on guys, great rim runner, protects the rim, but then, and he brings the ball up the floor. There's so much that he does well for you. All of a sudden you get in the playoffs and it's a half-court game. He doesn't know how to score in the half-court. So it's man, just think about if Bam could post guys up too and how dominant he would be in that regard. So that's sort of my thought to that I think maybe we could see it. I don't think we're going to see it with the slow-footed bigs who don't pass and just get fed a ton at the high school level.
And there's a lot of emphasis.
Hunter Dickinson, too, is another guy you could probably put in that category.
There's a lot of emphasis put on, we need a guy to switch 1 through 5. We need a guy to play make at the high post. And I think you're going to see that more with big men, but I like what you said about it boils down to a lot of guys don't know how to handle a traditional big that posts up on the block. It's just the pace of play in the NBA right now, I feel like doesn't really fit that. But in the half court playoffs, the game slows down.
Yeah. That's the thing. I don't think it's the half court play or anything about that. I think you mentioned these guys have to pass, but I think passing is such a natural thing for these guys. I feel like Jokic, his entire life was a natural passer. I don't think you can teach passing to a guy like Baughan or to a guy like Drew Timme. That's something that just comes so natural, and you have to be an unselfish guy too to do that. Obviously, accept a role, but it's really tough to become a good passer.
It's true, but but I also think you need people that are going to inspire you to want to play that way. I mean, the whole generation was inspired by Magic and Bird, and there was the idea of passing in that regard. And we don't have a lot of people. And I'll tell you, even LaMelo has made passing cool in some respects. And so I think Joker too. The idea there hasn't been somebody in a long time who has made it cool to be a passing big. And I think, and so yes, it is a natural thing. But it also starts. I mean, White Chocolate talks about the idea. A lot of times, it's guys needing some motivation. Jason Kidd, Jason Williams, they talked about that was the only way they could stay on the court. Was I just knew if I fed the better players, I'd stay on the court. And I think that's going to be the same thing. I think there's going to be young kids inspired by, that's, I don't know, call it my conspiracy theory, if you will, Carter. If we
put the hat on.
No, that's a prediction. That's not a conspiracy theory. We need hardcore stuff here. You're good. I will put it out. There's a headline coming out. Adam Stanco confirmed not a conspiracy theorist. How about that?
Well, coming up next, I'll get up.
Positive PR for you. All right, let's close with a couple draft talk, quick fire questions, and then I want to roll into a worst pickup basketball guy draft to wrap things up because we have a hard out here in about 7 minutes. So, all right, quick fire. Obviously, you're close with Don McLean. Who's the guy he just won't stop talking about? I know he worked out multiple guys. Who's the one guy that you just hear the most about?
Yeah, he had Jett Howard, Jordan Hawkins, Hood Schifino. But Jaime Jaquez is the guy.
That's why the Miami Heat drafted him then. That makes
and not because he's a UCLA guy. He said he is he has the reputation for being tough. He's way tougher than you think he is. He's a way harder worker than you think he is. He is going to be a very successful player at the next level.
Great fit too.
I thought he was a solid player. I thought he was going to be a solid player at the next level. But after talking to Don, he was raving. He's one of the guys that Don just absolutely fell in love with, and he's absolutely probably his favorite player this class.
All right, next one. Which player got drafted? Excuse me. Which player got drafted to a team that had the best fit for him in your eyes? So, example say Lively to Dallas or something like that.
Yeah, I think Brandon Podziemski, as it's pronounced, Santa Clara kid at Golden State. I also think Trace Jackson Davis, their other pickup. Not that he could shoot the ball, which you would think is a Golden State trait, but he's so explosive and just so undervalued, and he's going to get minutes. I think as an undersized 5 on that team, runs the floor so well. But I'll tell you, Podziemski, like the way that he shoots the basketball, his confidence. I don't know how many minutes are going to be in the backcourt this year, but again, Kerr loves to play those guys, and I think that's substantial. And also, Bruce Frazier on their staff works with shooters, so they love getting great shooters, and so they're going to have a field day, like finding ways to incorporate him into the offense. So I think he is absolutely. And I'll tell you the other one that's interesting. I don't even know if he'll even be on the roster this year, but Jalen Wilson of Kansas going to the Nets is a late draft guy that I think is interesting. I think he has more talent than – I know he didn't shoot well at the Combine and all that, but also he's got the Kansas connection with the head coach, Jacques Vaughn being a Kansas guy, so he knows the kind of potential there. So I wouldn't be surprised if he becomes a rotational guy for them at some point, either later in the season or next year.
Okay, last one that might just be your pick for this one. Who's your Kenneth Lofton pick of the year, a.k.a. your sleeper of the year? Deep sleeper.
I mean, I think I just said I think Trace Jackson Davis I feel like is the guy. I feel like they love to get rookies minutes during the season to get their confidence up, and again, he's got NBA explosiveness. He's got a chip on his shoulder. I really like that kid. So I think he's the one that's going to make a difference that people are going to look back on and say, man, I can't believe they got him so late. And it's probably a sleeper for this year. I don't know if that pans out long term. I think it's one of those things. We'll see him in spurts this year. We put out the clip, and then when he's out of the rotation and he's playing in Greece in 2 years, just
we delete the
out.
clip. Yeah, we can.
Or he has a triple double. Or he has a triple double midway through the year, and we post this clip, and we get all the clout in the world.
That's all I'm looking for.
Mine is, I'm going to go, I said it last week, but mine's Jordan Miller. I love Jordan Miller. I think he's just going to be around in the league. He's going to be a guy like a Bruce Brown where you're just like, he is always involved. Terrence Mann 2.0 for the Clippers type deal.
My one I had last week was Gigi Jackson. I know he had a down year at South Carolina. He should still be in high school, and the talent's there. I think there's a chance in the right system. I know he went late in the second round. He could be something.
And that's definitely not because he's an adjacent UNC guy. But, all right, let's move on. Worst pickup basketball guy draft. We'll have to go quickly here. If you missed the Fat Guy Moves draft, check it out. It was awesome. It was hilarious. But worst pickup basketball guy draft. So it's characteristics. For example, the guy who elbows. So great example. Nobody likes the guy who elbows. We're going to do 3 picks. Snake, we're going to have Adam go first, then Connor, then me. And let's just get things started. Adam, first pick.
Let's roll it.
Guy always clapping for the ball. That's absolute first pick for me.
That's perfect.
Oh.
Ball.
That's very
so good.
frustrating. Connor, go.
This is a personal pet peeve of mine. The guy who can't remember the score and constantly says the wrong score after every bucket. It's so annoying. I cannot stand it.
Yeah, because he's also a liar. He has no integrity. He's messing up the score on purpose.
I think we got 6. No, you have 3.
I'm going to go with guy who thinks it's Game 7. They think it's NBA Finals Game 7. Come on, dude. We're playing at a Mormon pickup church, or Mormon church, dude. Like, chill out. Like, this isn't Game 7. I'll go, and then we'll snake around. Next pick for me, I'm going to go guy who plays with AirPods in or headphones. That guy is never good. He
That's
sucks.
so good.
He never passes the ball, and he plays awful defense. He doesn't know what a switch is. Awful. Guy who plays with AirPods in, second pick for me.
And he probably has sweatpants on too. Let's see. My next pick is going to be the guy who clearly makes the wrong foul call and then argues to shoot for it, even though he's the one that made the wrong call. That is my second biggest pet peeve playing pickup basketball. No, I'm not going to shoot for it. You hacked me out of bounds.
The thing is, your guy could also, like, your first 2 picks can be the same guy.
Oh, I know. It usually is. Yeah.
Perfect.
All right, you're up, Adam.
You got 2 picks.
All right. This is the guy that plays another sport primarily. Like, let's say he's a soccer player,
Football.
typically, what have you, maybe football. Doesn't really know basketball that well, so he always ends up almost getting somebody hurt. Because
that's good.
defensively, when you make a move, you're used to a guy that will fall for your first move or what have you. This guy's not really even thinking about that, so the typical fakes don't draw them, and they end up with some weird. That's when you bang heads. That's where you hit the floor. So, guy who doesn't play basketball as his primary sport and causes injuries.
Dylan Brooks is going in the graphic for that one. I'm just letting you know right
now. And then I have another pick too.
Yeah, last round.
We're snaking this around. I gotta say, guys, and I'm worried one of you guys might be this, but headband guy.
No,
if you show up to the court with
Connor's
a headband on,
Connor's a sneaky headband guy. I've seen the
during COVID. I'd have a little ninja headband during COVID when we played at the Mormon church. That but I'm not gonna wear it to the park playing with strangers.
Adam, you've met me in person, and everybody watching this can see my pumpkin head. My head's too big for a headband. It constricts it too much. I'm a classic. I'm John Stockton, dude. Just get me some shorts, just a t-shirt, and let's
Converse.
play ball. I don't want any accessories. None of that tomfoolery.
Oh. Fits right in. John Stockton conspiracy theories. I get it.
Hey. No John Stockton slander. My dad listens to this. He's a big John Stockton guy. We don't do that here.
I was too for a long time. No, but if you wear a headband on the court, I'm judging you. I have a problem with it. I'm sorry. I'm probably not passing you the ball.
That's fair. That's fair. All right, my last pick real quick. It's going to be the guy who shatters the backboard on every shot and then blames it on himself being sore, or he just lifted the day before, or he's hurt in some kind of way.
Just lifted.
I just maxed my bench yesterday. Sorry, I'm clanking shots off the back of the rim. Yeah, okay.
He's pushing his pecs right all the time. Oh,
exactly. Oh, or starts rubbing him when he runs down the court after air ball. It's man, that's just sorry, guys.
Okay, all right. I have two here. I'm trying to debate between. I'm going to go guy who shows up in an NBA jersey and just shows up in a player's jersey. That guy is never good. Anybody who shows up they're wearing I don't know, just a random player. They're wearing a LaMelo Ball. Yeah.
Toronto Vince Carter's the one I see
Toronto
a lot.
Vince Carter, the Tracy McGrady jersey, and there's
that's a good one.
This guy sucks. But real quick, honorable mentions. I want to replace that last pick, but it's okay. One of my honorable mentions is guy who wears and one shorts. That's a dangerous guy. That's someone you don't want to be around.
That's the guy. If he loses, he need to get out of the gym quick.
A guy who thinks he's the coach, so the colonel of the court. I don't like him. Guy who thinks he's going to the league.
That's good.
And then this is one I really wish I would have drafted. Is guy who brings his girlfriend to basketball. Come on, dude. This is a sanctuary for guys.
Carter, you're that guy though.
I never bring her.
Carter.
I never bring my sweet Justine.
Carter, she was in the gym multiple occasions the last few times we played.
Which is fine.
No.
That is not true. That is not true.
It is true.
It is not true. That is blasphemy here. And also guy who smells. Guy who smells. Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. Oh, I have one more. Can I throw out an honorable mention too?
Absolutely.
The guy who always tries to bring the ball up the court and shouldn't be the point guard.
Oh, that's good.
That might have
that
might have been 1-1. That's a 1-1 type pick.
It is.
That should have been my first pick. There's nothing worse than going to get the ball, and here comes this guy. Listen, I played a lot of pickup back at the ESPN days. Doug Gottlieb, we had some great guards. Guy Karan Barnes, who was a 20-point per game scorer at Cornell. There were some great players there. Nothing would be worse than – I can respect that if you're playing with a really good lead guard who's going to distribute the ball, what have you. But to have some guy that's awful, might dribble it off his knee.
Yep.
Right? Certainly isn't going to find anyone. Is going to get trapped, turn it over.
Right at half court.
That guy asking for the ball every time, dude. Not one time.
They're typically a taller guy, too, sometimes.
And
the big guys who should be in the post want to bring up the ball. All right, Adam, thanks for coming on. That was amazing. I hope you liked the graphic. The graphic will be up on Twitter either later today or early. We'll post it. We'll post the graphic early Thursday. How about that? Give people time to see it. We'll have people vote on it. Thank you so much for joining us as always. Check out 24/7 Sports. Let the people know real quick. Is it 24/7 or is it 247? People need to know the correct pronunciation.
It's 24/7 Sports. That's what it is. So if you're ever wondering, it's 24/7 Sports. And we confuse people sometimes because we put out our top 247 list. And for some reason, we pronounce that differently. But yeah, so anytime you hear from now on, call 24/7 or 24/7 Sports. Find us on YouTube. Subscribe if you're a fan of one of the team sites, what have you. But we're going to put some cool stuff out. We're doing some fun things over the next few months. So
I'm expecting a rematch in ping pong sometime later, either this year or early next year. I will be back in Nashville for a rematch. I sucked at ping pong. I've been playing a lot of tennis lately. Hopefully that helps. But all right, thank you so much.
You guys are always welcome. You're always welcome. I got to say, I love the stuff you guys are doing. I love the clips you're putting out. I love your originality, and it is so hard for me to say no. I say no to everybody else, but for you guys, you just put out the signal, and I'm in.
We will. And you'll get the signal again come soon. But all right, follow him on Twitter @NaismithLives. That's it. We're done here. We'll see y'all next time. Bye-bye.